You were never meant to beg life, chase life, or wait upon life. Life is not something outside of you deciding whether you are worthy or ready. Life is an echo, and you are the sound. Life is a mirror, and you are the image it reflects. The speed at which life moves for you is not determined by time, luck, or effort, but by the authority with which you command within. When you command it in mind, life responds fast, not because the world suddenly changes, but because it had no choice other than to obey the inner decree you finally issued with conviction. Most people live as observers of their circumstances. They describe what they see, react to what appears, and call that realism. But this way of living keeps them enslaved to appearances. They forget that appearances are effects, not causes. The mind is the cause, consciousness is the author. When you learn to command internally instead of react externally, you step out of delay and into immediacy. The outer world cannot argue with a sustained inner command. It can only rearrange itself to match it. To command something in mind does not mean to wish, hope, or plead. A command is final. A command assumes authority. A command does not check the conditions of the world to see if it is possible. It speaks from the position of being already fulfilled. The mind does not respond to effort, it responds to identity. When you command from identity, reality accelerates. Consider this. Everything you have ever experienced in life was preceded by a mental acceptance. Even the things you did not want came because at some level you accepted them as natural, likely, or unavoidable. The mind does not distinguish between what you desire and what you fear. It only responds to what you accept as true. When you accept something fully, life rushes to confirm it. When you hesitate internally, life hesitates externally. Speed in manifestation is not about techniques, repetitions, or rituals. Speed is about decisiveness. The moment the mind stops wavering, the moment it stops asking how and starts declaring so it is, movement begins. Life is obedient to certainty. Doubt slows everything. Faith accelerates everything. Not faith in something outside you, but faith in your own inner authority. When you command it in mind, you are not forcing reality, you are aligning with the law by which reality operates. Reality is not created by action alone. Action without inner alignment produces struggle. Action aligned with inner command produces flow. This is why some people seem to move effortlessly from one success to another, while others work endlessly with little to show for it. The difference is not effort, it is inner assumption. The moment you assume the state of the one who already has, already is, already experiences, the mind reorganizes perception. You begin to notice different opportunities, speak differently, move differently, and choose differently. These changes feel natural, not forced, because they arise from identity rather than desire. Life responds fast because you are no longer contradicting yourself internally. Most delays are self-created through inner arguments. One part of the mind says I want, while another part says I don't believe. One voice imagines success, while another rehearses failure. Life responds to the dominant voice. If the dominant voice is uncertain, life reflects uncertainty. If the dominant voice is commanding, life reflects decisiveness. To command it in mind means you close the door to alternative outcomes. You stop entertaining opposing possibilities. You stop asking others for validation. You stop watching the outer world for signs. Signs follow, they do not precede. When you keep checking, you imply lack. When you command, you imply completion. Completion collapses time. Think of the moments in your life when things happened quickly and effortlessly. You likely did not overthink, analyze, or doubt. You simply knew. That knowing is the state of command. It is calm, quiet, and firm. It does not shout. It does not explain. It simply is. Life moves swiftly in response to that state because there is no resistance within you. Resistance is not in the world, it is in the mind. The world only appears resistant when the mind is divided. When the mind becomes singular in assumption, the world becomes fluid. Obstacles dissolve not because they were removed, but because they were never truly solid. They were projections of inner conflict. When you command it in mind, you do not wait to feel confident after results appear. You feel confident first. Feeling is not emotion alone, it is acceptance. It is the quiet knowing that this is done. Once accepted, the subconscious begins to express it through events, people, and circumstances. The subconscious is not logical, it is obedient. It does not question commands, it executes them. Life responds fast when commands are given without emotional desperation. Desperation implies lack. Command implies authority. Authority implies fulfillment. The moment you stop trying to convince yourself and start assuming, you shift from effort to power. You must understand this deeply. The mind does not respond to words alone, but to the state behind the words. You can repeat affirmations endlessly and see no change if your inner state contradicts them. But one moment of true acceptance can move mountains. One inner decision, firmly made, can rearrange years of stagnation. When you command it in mind, you also release the need to control how it happens. Control is fear disguised as responsibility. Trust is power disguised as calm. The mind that commands does not micromanage reality. It declares the end and allows the means to unfold naturally. This is why life responds fast. There is no interference. You were never meant to figure everything out. You were meant to decide. Decision is creation. Once decided internally, the path reveals itself. Steps appear, people show up, doors open. But none of this happens before the command. Life waits for your inner permission. Many people ask, why hasn't it happened yet? Without realizing that internally they are still negotiating. They are still imagining failure, preparing for disappointment, or leaving room for doubt. Life mirrors that hesitation. When you remove the hesitation, life removes the delay. Commanding in mind also means refusing to identify with past experiences. The past has no creative power unless you keep resurrecting it. The moment you redefine yourself internally, the past loses its grip. You are not bound by history, you are bound by assumption. Change the assumption and the future rushes forward. You do not need to feel worthy to command. Worthiness is not earned, it is assumed. The moment you assume worth, life reflects it. Waiting to feel worthy is another form of delay. Authority does not come from proof. Proof comes from authority. When you command it in mind, you move from hoping to knowing, from reacting to directing, from waiting to allowing. Life does not test you, it reflects you. The speed of that reflection depends on how clearly you see yourself. The inner world is the control room. The outer world is the screen. Yelling at the screen changes nothing. Adjusting the control room changes everything instantly. Once you understand this, frustration disappears. You stop blaming circumstances and start shaping them. Life responds fast when the command is sustained. A momentary decision followed by hours of doubt weakens the signal. But a steady assumption, even without emotional intensity, builds momentum. Consistency of state matters more than intensity of emotion. To command it in mind is to live from the end, not imagining how you will get there, but dwelling in the consciousness of already being there. From that state, actions become inspired rather than forced. You act because it feels natural, not because you are chasing something. When the mind accepts something as real, the body follows. Behavior follows. Speech follows. Even silence follows. Life respo. NDS to the totality of this alignment. The response appears fast because there is no internal contradiction slowing it down. You do not need permission from the world to assume what you desire. The world takes permission from you. The moment you stop asking and start assuming, the hierarchy reverses. You are not here to be shaped by life. Life is here to be shaped by you. Command it in mind, not with tension, but with calm certainty. Not with force, but with authority. Not with desperation, but with acceptance. And watch how life responds. Not slowly, not reluctantly, but swiftly, precisely, and inevitably, because life has never been responding to your words, your actions, or your circumstances. It has always been responding to your inner state. And the moment that state becomes a command, life has no option but to move. Command it in mind, and life responds fast. Because the moment you remain in that commanded state without seeking closure, without trying to wrap it up into a neat ending, you stay in motion. Life does not respond to conclusions. It responds to continuity. The inner state that keeps assuming, keeps expecting, keeps knowing, keeps flowing, is the state that never stalls reality. The moment you decide something is finished internally, not in fulfillment, but in effort, you subtly withdraw attention. But when you live in the state as a way of being, not as a goal to complete. Reality keeps unfolding without interruption. This is why impatience slows things down. Impatience is the silent confession that the command was not fully accepted. It is the mind checking the mirror before the image has settled. A true command does not rush. It does not count days or watch clocks. It lives as though time is irrelevant. And when time becomes irrelevant to you, it accelerates on your behalf. The mind that commands does not fluctuate between confidence and doubt based on external feedback. It does not rise when things look good and collapse when things look uncertain. It remains steady. That steadiness is what gives life its direction. The outer world cannot maintain chaos in the presence of inner order. Order imposed within must appear without. When you command it in mind, you also withdraw energy from opposing narratives. You stop telling stories about why it might not work. You stop rehearsing explanations for failure. You stop preparing excuses. Every explanation you give for delay feeds delay. Silence, inwardly, is power. The quiet mind that knows does not argue with itself. Life responds fast when there is no internal debate. Debate fractures energy. Decision concentrates it. Concentrated energy moves faster than scattered effort. This is why clarity creates speed. Not clarity about steps, but clarity about identity. Who are you being right now? That question matters more than what you are doing. The world always conforms to who you believe yourself to be. If you command from the identity of one who expects immediate alignment, alignment follows. If you command from the identity of one who expects struggle, struggle appears. The command is never separate from the commander. You cannot command wealth while secretly identifying as deprived. You cannot command freedom while inwardly rehearsing limitation. Identity is the command. This is not about pretending. Pretending carries tension. Command carries calm. Pretending cheese for cracks. Command rests. The mind knows the difference. Life knows the difference. When you rest in the assumption, movement becomes effortless because you're no longer pushing against yourself. You may notice that when you stop trying to make things happen, they begin to happen faster. This is not coincidence. Trying implies distance. Being implies presence. Presence collapses distance. Life does not travel toward you, it emerges through you. When the command is internalized, reactions change automatically. Situations that once triggered fear lose their grip. Delays that once caused frustration no longer disturb you. This emotional neutrality is not indifference, it is dominance. Dominance is calm, and calm is the signature of authority. The mind that commands does not need reassurance. It does not seek signs. Signs are for those who doubt. When you know, you do not look. And paradoxically, when you stop looking, confirmation appears everywhere, not because you needed it, but because life reflects coherence. This state becomes your normal. And when it becomes normal, life keeps pace with it. The faster life moves, the more natural it feels. Effort disappears because effort belonged to the old identity. Now, movement feels like gravity rather than struggle. Commanding in mind also means allowing yourself to release urgency. Urgency is fear of absence. Authority assumes presence. The more you relax into the assumption, the more quickly things reorganize. Relaxation is not passivity, it is trust in the law that never fails. You do not need to reinforce the command constantly with force. You reinforce it by remaining faithful to the state. Faithfulness is purse. Istance without strain. It is returning to the assumption whenever attention drifts, not with frustration, but with ease. As this becomes habitual, life begins to feel responsive, almost conversational. Thoughts appear and echoes follow. Decisions arise and pathways open. The relationship between inner movement and outer response becomes obvious. Doubt fades not because you fought it, but because experience replaced it. And so the command continues, not as a moment, not as an exercise, but as a way of inhabiting yourself. You do not conclude it, you do not finish it, you live it. And as long as it is lived, life keeps responding, adjusting, unfolding, rearranging, without pause, without resistance, without delay. And that unfolding has no final punctuation, no period where you stop and say it is over, because the state itself is movement. The moment you treat the inner command as something temporary, something you do and then abandon, you return to separation. But when the command becomes the way you occupy your awareness, Life stays in dialogue with you, constantly reshaping itself to match the tone you are holding. You begin to notice that circumstances no longer shock you. Even unexpected events feel neutral, almost cooperative, because you are no longer reading meaning from appearances. You read meaning from within. When something seems delayed, you do not interpret it as failure. You interpret it as rearrangement. Interpretation determines emotional response, and emotional response determines whether the command remains intact or fractures. The mind that commands understands that movement is not always visible immediately. Visibility is not the measure of PR. Ogress. Alignment is. When alignment is present, visibility must follow, even if it has not yet entered the field of perception. This understanding keeps the inner state undisturbed, and an undisturbed state moves faster than any effort driven by anxiety. You are no longer trying to fix life. Fixing assumes something is broken. Commanding assumes order. The difference is subtle but powerful. When you assume order, you stop interfering with the natural intelligence that carries things into form. Interference slows, allowance accelerates. As this awareness stabilizes, your inner dialogue changes. You speak to yourself differently. Thoughts that once spiraled into worry now dissolve before completing themselves. Not because you suppress them, but because they no longer match who you are being. The mind naturally discards what does not align with identity. Life responds to this internal coherence by simplifying itself. Complications fall away. Excess effort disappears. You find yourself doing less yet accomplishing more. This is not laziness. It is efficiency born of alignment. When the inner command is clear, fewer steps are required. You also begin to sense that waiting is no longer part of your experience. Events seem to overlap. Outcomes appear sooner than expected. Opportunities present themselves without struggle. This is not because the world suddenly favors you, but because you are no longer contradicting the flow with inner resistance. Commanding in mind does not mean you never feel emotion. It means emotion no longer dictates direction. Feelings rise and pass, but the assumption remains. Weather does not change the direction of the ocean. In the same way, passi. NG moods do not alter a sustained inner command. The more you remain in this state, the less you feel the need to explain yourself to others. Explanation is often a sign of uncertainty. Certainty does not argue. It moves quietly and lets results speak in their own time, which often arrives sooner than expected. You notice too that comparison loses its power. Other people's timelines no longer matter. Speed is personal. Life responds to you at the speed of your acceptance, not at the speed of someone else's belief. When comparison ends, clarity sharpens, and clarity increases momentum. This way of living feels less like effort and more like orientation. You are simply facing a different direction. And when direction changes, the path changes automatically. You are not pushing reality, you are allowing it to catch up with a decision already made. The command does not require emotional intensity to remain effective. Calm persistence is stronger than bursts of enthusiasm followed by doubt. The steady flame moves faster than the spark that burns out. Life mirrors consistency with consistency. As you stay here, reactions from the world feel less personal. Praise does not inflate you. Delay does not discourage you. Criticism does not define you. Neutrality increases, and with it, power. Neutrality allows you to remain in command regardless of circumstances. You begin to sense that the inner state is self-sustaining. You do not need reminders. You do not need motivation. The assumption has taken root. From here, life continues to adjust, refine, and reorganize itself around you, not as a dramatic event, but as an ongoing response to a state that remains active, present, and unfinalized. And that unfinalized state is precisely what keeps reality pliable. The moment you resist the urge to summarize, to label the experience as complete or accomplished, you remain inside the creative flow itself. Life is not responding to an endpoint, it is responding to a frequency. As long as the frequency is maintained, response is inevitable and continuous. You may notice that the mind becomes less noisy, not because thoughts disappear, but because fewer thoughts compete for authority. When authority is established, the mind naturally quiets. There is nothing left to argue. Inner silence is not emptiness, it is alignment. And alignment removes friction. allowing life to move swiftly without obstruction. In this state, you do not need to rehearse the command repeatedly. Repetition is useful only until acceptance occurs. Once acceptance is complete, repetition becomes redundant. The command lives in posture, in expectation, in how you enter situations without bracing for resistance. Your presence itself becomes the declaration. You stop asking what will happen next because the question implies uncertainty. Instead, you move as though the next moment is already cooperating. This assumption subtly shapes interactions. Conversations flow differently. Decisions come easier. Even pauses feel purposeful rather than empty. The world begins to feel responsive in a way that is difficult to explain logically. Not dramatic, not theatrical, but precise. Timing improves, interruptions diminish, even challenges appear softer, more navigable, as if they were never meant to stop you, only redirect you. You no longer attempt to emotionally force belief. Belief is not something you squeeze into existence. It settles naturally when the mind stops oscillating. Stability replaces excitement, and stability is far more powerful than excitement because it does not depend on circumstances. When something does not immediately shift, you do not retreat into analysis. Analysis pulls you back into effort. Instead, you remain. Remaining is the practice. Remaining is the power. Remaining tells life that nothing needs to be proven because the assumption has already been made. As this continues, your relationship with desire transforms. Desire no longer feels like longing. It feels like recognition. You are not reaching for something foreign. You are allowing something familiar to surface. This familiarity removes urgency, and urgency is what once slowed everything down. The command remains active not through tension, but through loyalty to the inner state. Loyalty means you return to it gently whenever attention drifts, without self-judgment, without correction, without force. This gentleness is misunderstood by the mind that equates power with strain. But true power is relaxed because it knows it does not need to prove itself. And so the state continues not as a destination reached, but as a stance maintained, where life keeps answering, adjusting, and moving in rhythm with an assumption that is still alive, still present, still issuing its influence, without needing to announce completion. And within that maintained stance, something subtle but profound begins to take place. You stop bracing yourself for outcomes. Bracing implies anticipation of impact, as though life might collide with you rather than move with you. When the inner comma, ND, is stable, anticipation dissolves. You are no longer preparing for disappointment or success. You are simply present, and presence is the most magnetic state of all. Presence allows life to approach you without resistance. Events unfold without friction because you are not internally pulling away or pushing forward. You are allowing. Allowing is not passive, it is confident openness. It signals that whatever arrives will be met from a place of authority rather than reaction. As this openness becomes familiar, your perception of effort changes. Things you once thought required struggle now require only attention. Attention directs energy, and energy directs form. Where attention rests without conflict, manifestation accelerates. Conflict scatters attention. Command gathers it. You begin to recognize that most obstacles were never external. They were pauses created by inner hesitation. When hesitation fades, obstacles lose their substance. They may still appear as forms, but they no longer block movement. They redirect, refine, or dissolve as needed. The inner command also alters how you experience time. Waiting feels shorter. Moments feel fuller. Gaps between intention and response seem to compress. This is not because time itself has changed, but because you are no longer dividing yourself between now and later. Unity collapses distance. You notice that you respond rather than react. Reaction belongs to the past, to conditioning, to habit. Response belongs to the present, to awareness, to choice. Life responds faster when you do, because you are no longer dragging yesterday into this moment. There is also a growing sense of neutrality toward outcomes, not indifference, but steadiness. Whether something appears immediately or unfolds gradually, your inner posture remains unchanged. This consistency communicates trust, and trust is the language life understands most fluently. The mind no longer searches for reassurance through repetition or comparison. It does not scan the horizon for evidence. Evidence becomes secondary. Alignment becomes primary. And alignment, once established, does not need constant maintenance. It sustains itself through use. As you continue in this state, you realize that commanding in mind does not feel like control. It feels like coherence. Everything inside is moving in the same direction. There is no inner resistance slowing the current. When inner movement is unified, outer movement naturally accelerates. This coherence influences even the smallest details. Words come easier. Choices feel clearer. Pauses feel intentional. You are not forcing life into shape. You are allowing it to reveal the shape that already matches the inner command you continue to hold without closure, without finality, without the need to conclude. And so understand this clearly, not as an idea, but as a lived truth. Life has never been slow, stubborn, or distant. It has only been responding with perfect accuracy to the level of authority you held within. The moment you stop negotiating with your own mind, the moment you stop waiting for permission, proof, or perfect conditions, something irreversible happens. You step into command. From that place, life does not need to be chased, forced, or convinced. It moves because it must. It aligns because it reflects. What you consistently assume as true becomes the only reality available to express itself. When you command it in mind, you are no longer at the mercy of circumstances, time, or chance. You become the point of origin, and from that origin life responds, not eventually, not reluctantly, but swiftly, faithfully, and without exception.